Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Picture this. You're the fan of an NFL team, and you're incredibly excited and pumped up because your team just won the game. Because of this, you turn on a sports highlight show to try and catch what the media is saying about your team, or to relive the best plays and moments from the game. However, you feel ripped off. Either the show didn't show your game, or they devoted an incredibly limited amount of time to it, or they showed more highlights of what the other team did, even though your team just won the game. At this point, you have four options. Do you A, do absolutely nothing, B, boycott the show and never watch it again, or cut back on the amount of time that you watch that show, C, voice your frustrations by writing a letter or calling into the station, or D, send a death threat to the person doing the voiceover for the highlights. If you chose D, congratulations. Not only are you an insane person that needs help immediately, but you might also be a Dolphins fan. Because in 1972, a group of Dolphins fans sent in a death threat to Howard Cosell because they felt they were being disrespected. And this is the story behind that. Before I talk about the actual incident, we need some context as to the 1972 Dolphins, because it will help us to understand why these fans were so upset. Although I will say this won't help us to understand at all why on earth you would ever send a death threat. After the 1971 season, the Miami Dolphins were looking like they were in a prime position to have another great year. When the Dolphins played in the AFL and were led by head coach George Wilson, they were the laughing stock of the league. But once Don Shula stepped in, he immediately turned the team around, and in just his second year in charge, had guided the Dolphins to their first Super Bowl appearance in franchise history, leading them to Super Bowl VI. While the Dolphins lost that game to the Dallas Cowboys, the expectations for Miami in 1972 were pretty high. They were projected by many as the favorites to get back to the Super Bowl and repeat as AFC champions. And sure enough, they lived up to the hype, as to say that they met the pressure would be an understatement. They won their first game of the season against the Kansas City Chiefs by a final score 20-10. Then they beat the Oilers 34-13. Then they beat the Vikings 16-14. And this winning streak continued all the way until the end of November, as through the first 10 weeks, they were 10-0. No team in the Super Bowl era had ever gone undefeated over the course of an entire season. The last team to go undefeated over an entire regular season was 30 years before, when the Chicago Bears went 11-0 entering the 1942 NFL Championship. The last team to finish the job and go undefeated over the course of an entire season was the 1929 Green Bay Packers, who went 12-0-1 in an era before they had postseason games. And there had never been a team in the over half-century-long history of the league at the time to go undefeated without tying. And yet, here the Miami Dolphins were through 10 weeks, about to go on Monday Night Football for their Week 11 matchup against the St. Louis Cardinals, still sitting without a blemish. They were winning with a defense that was first in points allowed at the time, and an offense that was second in points scored, only behind the New York Jets. They were an exciting team, they were the best team in football, and were on pace to do something historic. The only problem? In the eyes of Dolphins fans, nobody knew that they existed. Remember that this is 1972 that we're talking about. There is no internet. There is no ESPN or NFL Network or other sports channel. Most people have the big three networks of CBS, NBC, ABC, and then PBS. And that was it. That raises the question, how did people watch sports highlights back then? Well, there were three ways. The first way was to watch the local news and wait for the sports section, although they only would show your local team. If you were in New York, your local NBC4 station isn't showing highlights of the game between the Rams and the Falcons. The second way was if you were in one of the lucky markets that got the syndicated show This Week in Pro Football, which showed highlights of games courtesy of NFL Films. If you watched it in the late 70s, it was known as This Is the NFL by that point. The third way was this little thing called Monday Night Football. When halftime hit for games on CBS and NBC, they would often just stay on the field and show the halftime show, which was usually some marching band, or they would cut to an interview or cut to a news update. Not ABC. Because part of what made Monday Night Football so big was that at halftime, they would show the highlights of Sunday's games. Usually it was somewhere in the ballpark of 5 games getting the halftime spotlight, although sometimes they would throw highlights in during timeouts in the first and second half. What kind of representation were the 10-0 Dolphins getting? Let's just say it was pretty minimal. Most of the time in 1972, whatever the Dolphins did would either not be shown, or would be shown in a way that many fans took offense to. Obviously you're not going to please everyone, but here's an example of what they meant. This comes from halftime of a 1972 Monday Night Football game between the Oakland Raiders and the Houston Oilers. On Sunday, the Dolphins beat the Jets 27-17. What you are watching is the exact highlight video that ABC aired. I timed it out. They showed 2 Dolphins plays and 2 Jets plays, giving equal representation to both teams' positive moments, despite the fact that the Dolphins won. And as it turns out, the Dolphins actually got less screen time than the Jets. The Dolphins' good plays were on the screen for 23.3 seconds. The Jets' good plays were on the screen for 33.3 seconds, getting roughly 1.5 times the coverage, despite the fact that they lost the game. This package did not include a touchdown run that Jim Kick had in the fourth quarter, which turned out to be the game-winning touchdown as it gave the Dolphins a 24-10 lead. This was also one of the better highlight packages for Miami, because in other halftimes they were flat out ignored, as ABC did not show the highlights from their games. This made many Dolphins fans furious. If they were out of market, or even in market since the blackout rule applied for home games even if the game sold out, this was their one chance to see how their team was doing, and they thought that they were being shafted. Now, it was Miami's turn to play on Monday Night Football themselves, November 27, 1972, for a game against the St. Louis Cardinals. And some Dolphins fans voiced their frustration in just about the worst way possible. Before I explain exactly what happened, this needs to be said right off the bat, and I'm sure a lot of you know this already. Howard Cosell has no input in what highlights are shown whatsoever. His job as the play-by-play man is to call the games and describe to the viewers what they're seeing. He does not control what highlights get shown. He does not manually edit the highlight clips. That is the job of the production team. After all the Sunday games are played, ABC picks 5 games to showcase. What's interesting is that they have no idea what the footage even looks like. Before they get the footage, they have to pick the 5 games going off of newspaper articles and reports and hearsay. Sometimes the game gets chosen simply because the producer's buddy thought that it was a good game. It was not a scientific process at all. After picking the 5 games, ABC would get the footage and then choose how they wanted to air the highlights on Monday Night Football. Howard Cosell has no involvement with this whatsoever. Chet Forte, the producer-director of Monday Night Football, made this abundantly clear. He said although Cosell does the voiceover on the highlights, he has nothing to do with picking the games. They can blame that on me and Dennis Lewin, my co-producer. It seems incredibly obvious today, but maybe people weren't as television savvy back in 1972. Just think about this from a practical standpoint. Imagine if Chris Berman picked the highlights on NFL Primetime, even for the late games that end literally as he's doing the show. How would that even work? It wouldn't. And yet, despite Cosell's obvious lack of involvement with picking the games and the highlights, because he was the face of the program and the guy doing the voiceover, he got the brunt of the blame. And Dolphins fans were so upset at Cosell that not only did they send in hate mail, but some crazy people sent in death threats, including drop dead and don't show up at the stadium. Once Cosell arrived in Miami, fans found out what hotel he was staying at, and then bombarded the hotel with a bunch of telephone calls. Cosell not only turned over the death threats to the FBI, but he also made a statement the day before the game, lashing out at the fans for this. He said, "Isn't it preposterous that in our tormented world with all its major problems, grown men can get so upset over a 1-minute film clip of a football game?" Cosell then added that the people upset at this are neither mature nor rational, and that people need to take a serious hard look at themselves. The situation got so bad that even Dolphins head coach Don Shula was worried about what would happen, and made a statement to the press asking the fans to stop. While he understood their frustration, he added that ABC physically cannot show every single team in the highlights, and that he would hate for anything out of order to happen. Which raises one final question. Did anything out of order wind up happening? Oh, you bet. The good news is that Howard Cosell made it out alive. He did not get beaten up on his way to the stadium, he did not get injured, and nothing that endangered Cosell's health occurred. The bad news is that some Dolphins fans displayed their frustrations by running onto the field at various points in the fourth quarter. Security was clearly not ready for what was about to happen, because there were multiple points late where fans ran onto the field. Even though ABC didn't want to show the fans on TV and encourage others to do this, you can still see various instances of fans running onto the field. It prompted Cosell to say after the game, "These fans are crazy. It took cops and police dogs to handle them. This town has gone mad." And one reporter described the scene as a circus atmosphere. Whether this was a protest against ABC's treatment of the Dolphins, or just a bunch of drunk fans wanting to get onto the field, I'm not sure. However, the game got out of control. Miami wound up winning the game convincingly, taking it by a final score 31-10 and keeping their undefeated season alive. And Miami would finish the job and go 14-0 in the regular season, then win all 3 of their playoff games, winning Super Bowl VII over Washington to cap off the perfect 17-0 season. There's just one final question to answer. Did ABC's treatment of the Dolphins change? Unfortunately, it's tough to definitively answer this question, since many of these moments are lost media. However, in the sample size of one that is available, we do have halftime highlights from a December 11th game between the New York Jets and the Oakland Raiders. The previous Sunday, the Dolphins beat the New York Giants by a final score 23-13. ABC showed the highlights, showed both touchdowns that Miami scored, and devoted 3 plays to Miami comprising 44 seconds, compared to 1 play for the Giants that took over 17 seconds. The balance was way better than it was for the Dolphins-Jets game earlier in the year, and they showed the Dolphins. So I guess Dolphins fans got their wish if that highlight package was anything to go off of. But as an obvious note to anyone watching this video, if you're watching SportsCenter or Good Morning Football or any of those sports highlight shows and you don't think that your team is being treated fairly, don't send a death threat to the announcers. Not only do they have nothing whatsoever to do with the packages being shown, but it should go without saying that you just shouldn't send death threats to people. Because when you do, you find yourselves on the side of what might be the craziest controversy in the over half-century-long history of Monday Night Football. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Monday and Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaredGator9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JJ9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.